Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Jagannath Puri Dham. It's nice to be back again with our friends. Today we'll be speaking something again from our 41st session of meeting in Kurukshetra. This is our 7th session about Uddhava meeting Nanda and Yashoda, and we'll probably have at least one or two more of those. So, good morning. And Hare Krishna, we'll go ahead and say a few prayers to begin with. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Gudachama Gopyara Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskritcham Naramschaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswachim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanishchaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadyecha Hari Sarvatra Giyate Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Keyboard Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Mote Udara Radha Dava Mote Udara Radha Dava Mote Udara Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaita Vocha Padamo Vastava Matta Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite Kimva Parayishvara Sadyo Hridyavarudhyate Chakriti Bishu Shubhistakshanat Nigama Kolpataro Galitam Phalam Shukamukadamitra Dravasam Yutam Pivata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka Anarto Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Adhoksaje Lokasya Janito Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam Yashyam Vaishyamanayam Krishne Pradama Purushe Bhaktirupadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Paranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramaham Samekam Amalam Gyanam Pradam Giyate Tatra Gyane Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskarmyama Viskritam Touch Trindvan Supaten Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchen Nadaha Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam Bhadatarta Vinyunaya Gayatri Bashurupo So Vedarta Paribrimita Sarva Vediti Hasanam Sadam Sadam Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Tripta Shyananyatra Svedvachi Kvachit Krishna Bhakti Rasa Swarup Shri Bhagavata Tate Veda Shastra Hoite Parama Mahadva Chari Upanishade Jata Kichu Hoya Tara Arta Lena Vyasa Korila Sanchaya Jai Sutre Jai Rup Vishaya Vachana Bhagavate Serup Slokani Bandana Jivera Nistada Lagi Sutra Koilo Vyasa Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoya Sarvanasha Jao Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavirastane Ekanta Shayakoro Chaitanya Charane Bhagavata Jainamane Sejavana Sama Tadasasta Ache Janme Prabhu Jama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham, dear devotees. It's nice to be back again and have some Krishna Katha. It's our life and soul. Nice to see Sanjay Prabhu here and Brinda Sundari. Hare Krishna. If you're watching, please make some comment if you have something you want to say. It's nice to see who's here. So this is our 41st session that we're calling a meeting in Kurukshetra. And we're laying the foundation for that meeting because that's a very, very important thing. If you speak about separation, there has to be some union also. If there's no question of having separation from someone you've never met. There's no feeling there. But if you have union very close with someone and then separation comes, that's a very intense thing. So this is our 7th session, speaking about Uddhava meeting Nanda and Mother Yashoda. It was a topic that my Guru Maharaj was very fond of. And I think we'll probably speak about this in at least 1 or 2 more sessions after this. It's a very, very sweet topic. I'd just like to look back a little bit since we've been offline for a week or so now. And we're going to speak something today about how Uddhava was preaching to Nanda and Yashoda that Krishna was God. In our last session, before we left Sridham Mayapur, we were speaking about how there are different types of faith and how Uddhava was speaking in a particular type of way to Nanda and Yashoda. But Srila Prabhupada says this is not the Vrindavan, what he calls the Vrindavan status of mind. In a lecture he gave in Los Angeles on April 23rd, 1973, we'll repeat this again, we spoke about this in a previous session, but it's such a sweet thing. He said, we offer obeisances to Krishna with awe and veneration, but no one comes to Krishna with a rope saying, Krishna, you're an offender, I shall bind you up. That is a prerogative of the most perfect devotee. Krishna wants that because he's full of opulence. Krishna is Ainur Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan, greater than the greatest and smaller than the smallest. That's opulence. And Prabhupada says, those who are thinking to first of all analyze Krishna to ascertain whether or not he is God, they're not first-class devotees. Those who have spontaneous love for Krishna, they are first-class devotees. So how can we study Krishna? It's not possible. Therefore, this Vrindavan status of mind is a perfection for the devotees. It's not their business to understand Krishna. They only want to love Krishna without condition. Their mentality is not, quote, because Krishna is God, therefore I love him. Krishna is not playing in Vrindavan as God. He's playing there as an ordinary cowherd boy. But at times, he's proving that he's the supreme personality of Godhead. So we've been speaking from the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, which describes the meeting of Uddhava with Nanda and Yashoda. In the text 30, Uddhava says, Yuvam slagatamo nunam dehinam ihimanada nayane kila guru yat krita mutter idrisi. Uddhava said, "O respectful Nanda, certainly you and Mother Yashoda are the most praiseworthy persons in the entire world, since you have developed such a loving attitude toward Lord Narayan, the spiritual master of all living beings." So Uddhava was seeing how Nanda Maharaj was speaking about how Krishna killed the demons and how Krishna humiliated even the demigods when he was in Vrindavan. And Uddhava, thinking that, oh, this will please Nanda Maharaj, starts speaking about how Krishna is Narayan. And he's telling Nanda and Yashoda that Slagatamo, Yuvam, Slagatyamo, the two of you are the most praiseworthy, Nunam Dehinam, of all living beings in this world, because you have Lord Narayan. You develop love for Lord Narayan, who's Krishna. The reason why Nanda Maharaj was, to look back in some of our previous sessions, the reason why Nanda Maharaj was speaking the way he did wasn't that he likes so much to hear about Krishna as Bhagavan, or that he thinks about Krishna as Bhagavan, but Nanda Maharaj was trying to control his feelings. And if he started speaking about Krishna in a very sweet way, he knew that he would lose it. He would start crying and crying. And so he began to speak about Krishna, how he killed the demons and did this and this. And Uddhava, thinking this would be good, he starts speaking like this to Nanda and Yashoda. And in text 31 of the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, Uddhava tells Nanda and Yashoda, Eto hi vishvasya cha bija yoni Ramo mukunda purusha pradhanam Anviya bhuteshu vilakshana shagyanasya chesata imo parano. He says these two lords, Mukunda and Balaram, are each the seed and womb of the universe, the creator and his creative potency. They enter into the hearts of all living beings and control their conditioned awareness. They are the primeval supreme. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshani says that here he's saying that Krishna and Balaram, they're the only cause of the universe. They enter all living beings. And Uddhava goes on to tell Nanda and Yashoda that anyone, he says that even if that person is mana avishuddham, this is in the next verse, they're mana avishuddham, but kshanam samavesha. Mana avishuddham means their mind is impure. But kshanam samavesha, if they absorb themselves just for kshanam, just for one moment in Krishna, then they burn up all their sinful reactions. Nirhitya karma, asayam. All asayam means all traces. All traces of their karma is burned up. And yati param gatim, they go to the supreme destination. Someone who simply absorbs himself at one moment, for one moment, at the time of death. In Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, Krishna says here that Uddhava, in effect, is telling Nanda and Yashoda that Krishna, he's a root form, he's a revealer of all Atmas. And Nanda Maharaj becomes a little confused, and he says, wait a minute, the cause is Narayan. Does Krishna have four arms? Narayan has four arms. Krishna doesn't have four arms. And Uddhava says, but you should understand that Krishna is Brahman. And he's Brahman Martya Murto. He's Brahman in a human-like form. And because you have this anurag bhav, you have this intense devotion for Krishna, which is even greater, nitaram, it's the greatest degree, even more than Vasudeva and Devaki. You're the best of all personalities. In Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami further explains this discussion how Uddhava began speaking Gyan to Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. It's a very, very deep topic. This is actually a postgraduate topic. My Guru Maharaj spoke about this at length, and I remember sometimes when he would begin to speak, he would tell us that this is meant for postgraduate students. And he said, I don't see any such students here. He said, but what can I do? If I don't speak this thing, I'll die. So he's speaking like that, then who are we to try to speak this? Recently, I happened the good fortune to read a short biographical description in Satyaraj's journal, Journal of Vaishnava Studies. I wrote an article in the latest issue about Fakir Mohan Prabhu. If someone is interested in getting a copy of that article, by the way, just send me a message and we can go ahead and send that to you. But in that same issue, there's a nice article by a friend of ours about a very little-known devotee whose name was Haridas Das Babaji. Fakir Mumba was actually his personal assistant at one point. And Haridas Das was a compiler of a wonderful book. I can show you. It's sitting right next to me here on my desk. It's the Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidan. He actually printed it in 2 volumes. It was a work that he continued after the disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on the request of the devotees of the Gaudiya mission. And it's like a complete encyclopedia of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And in his short life, Haridas Das Babaji, I think he wrote something like 70 different books. But he's not a very famous person. A, because he didn't have any disciples, although many people approached him and requested him, he refused to accept disciples. And B, because he never gave class. And certainly he was never live streaming on Facebook. But he wanted to keep a very low profile. He just wanted to do his service. So I'm meditating on him today and feeling a little ridiculous and foolish to be sitting here live streaming on Facebook. And someone may question him, why are you doing that? We're doing it because we have an instruction from our Guru Maharaj, and because devotees have asked us, and my Guru Maharaj told me, if someone asks you to give class, you have no other choice, you must. He said, but when you speak, you should just repeat what you've heard from your Guru and the previous acharyas. So that's for our purification, and we're doing this to try to share with the devotees. My Guru Maharaj also told us that you should speak, you should work to help uphold the prestige of Prabhupada's mission. And he said the best way to do that is to have nice Krishna Katha and nice Vaishnava dealings. So I'm feeling very comfortable being back here today in our ashram. It feels really actually completely different than it did in Mayapur. And I feel good. So we're going to continue now. So the Uttara chapter, Uttara Kanda of the Gopal Champu in chapter 10, Jiva Goswami speaks more about what Uddhava is saying to Nanda and Yashoda, and how he starts speaking this Gyan to them. And he says that Uddhava starts thinking that, wow, this is amazing. This is Ami Subhagya. I'm so very, very fortunate to witness these 2 devotees, Nanda and Yashoda, and the deep, intense love they have for Krishna. He says, but Uddhava is such a good messenger, such a good counselor. He's thinking it's very difficult for them to spend their time without him. And it's not possible for my master Krishna to come here, and it's impossible for them to go there. And he says, although it's impossible to weaken their natural affection, maybe I can interrupt it somewhat. And if I interrupt it, then it might be possible for the 2 of them to survive. This is the secret reason why Uddhava begins to speak Gyan to Nanda and Yashoda, thinking that this is the only way I'm going to be able to keep these 2 alive. Their feelings of separation for Krishna are so intense, they're definitely going to die. So if I can interrupt that by getting them focused on Gyan, a knowledge about Krishna, then I might be able to keep them alive. So Uddhava then began to speak aloud to them. And he told them, Krishna Narayanakhya Swayam Iha Bhagavan Prema Tasmin Vishudam Sarvesvarteshu Varyam Tadanuchar Paramam Bhakti Vatsalyam Eva. He says that Krishna Narayanakya Swayam. Krishna is directly Narayan. He's Swayam Iha Bhagavan. He's Swayam Bhagavan. He's Bhagavan God. Prema Tasmin Vishudam. In him resides this pure prem, which is Sarvesh Varteshu. Sarva Arteshu. It's greater than all the different goals of life. And amongst this prem, he says, Varyam tad anu chaparamam bhakti vatsalyam eva. The paramam prema, the topmost prema, Uddhava is saying, is vatsalya priti. The love of the parents for the child. Now, for those of you who are a little well-versed in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Gaudiya literature, you may question, why is Uddhava saying this? It's not true. We know that Madhurya Ras, Madhurya Priti, that's the topmost type of love. But you see, Uddhava hasn't met the gopis yet. And that'll come in the next chapter of the 10th canto. So Uddhava goes on to tell them, Tasmin purtam yuvam yat trijagaticha gato tena tashyaiva murti. Because the two of you, you're the perfect examples of that Vatsalya Priti. You're the most fortunate persons in all the three worlds. And he says, if someone can have a little of your association, then they can attain the deepest rati for Krishna. This is a very, very deep point. We want to associate with devotees because we want to capture what's in their heart. And therefore, we are instructed by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that we should meditate on a particular associate of the Lord. And to help us to do that, because how do I meditate on some personality that is living in the spiritual world, a place that I can't conceive, that I've never been to, that I know nothing about? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has given us our Gaudiya our Panjika, this calendar, which he's described many different great personalities such as Purushottam Thakur and Gauridas Pandit and many different associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he describes who they are in Krishna Lila. And so by meditating on them in Gaura Lila, then we can understand something about them in Krishna Lila. And by associating with them in this way, we can get something of the love that they have. So then Uddhava goes on to tell Nanda and Yashoda, Pradhanam Purusho Brahma Yat Etat Trayam Uchate Angsang Sam Tad Vijani Yat Krishna Ramavayo Prabhu. You should know that this Pradhan, Purush, the Jiva, Brahman, all of these, Etat Trayam Uchate, these are three portions of portions. They're Angsang Sam. They're portions of portions of Krishna and Balaram. So Uddhava then, he sees that Nanda and Yashoda couldn't even hear what he's saying. Atanayo keva tan madhurja, because they're just absorbed in Krishna's sweetness. So then Uddhava begins to tell them that Krishna is actually coming in the future. And so he wanted to speak with them about Krishna's opulence mixed with sweetness as his main topic. So then he tells them, Sarvesham Satvana Tanam Patirapi Bhagavan Sudha Vatsalya Bhavat Putratvam Prapayad Vam Tadati Lagu Yuvam Avrajit Eva Deva Abrajapi Swayam Tadbhavad Abhiruchitam Nityam Uchai Vidhata Loke Vedecha Siddhim Balayati Bhavatos Chachaya Lalanakyam. You have this Lalana Bhav, you have this mood of caring for Krishna as your son. So you should understand that this Krishna, who's Sarvesham Satvanatanam Patir, he's the master, the Pati, of all the Sattvata personalities. Sarvesham means all. He's a master of all the devotees. And he's become your son because Sudavatsalya Bhavat, because you have this very intense love for him. You should understand. He says that very quickly, Ati Lagu, very, very quickly, Krishna Yuvam Avrajadeva Deva. He's going to come here and fulfill your desires. And you should know that your caring for him as your son will become famous in the Puranas and the Vedas. He told Nanda and Yashoda, don't worry, you'll become very, very famous. Hatva Kamsam Ranga Madhya Pratipam. He said, having killed Kamsa, who is the enemy of the members of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna said that he was going to come to you. He said this in a very loud voice. Agam yarad yovad uchitad artam. Satyam ucha. He said this with great truth. So Nanda Maharaj, Uddhava thought this would pacify Nanda and Yashoda, that I tell them, don't worry, Krishna's going to return very quickly. But Jiva Goswami comments, he says, Atta tatapi tayor keda samvetanata sapuna ugra vayagriam uvacha. That this keda, samveda, this grief-stricken, this heartbroken nature of Nanda and Yashoda, when he saw that it didn't work, then sapuna ugra vayagrama uvacha. Uddhava began to speak in a very, very intense, heartfelt way. Ahaha mahita bhago kidyatam asmamipam satantam adivasantam dakshantat krishnam masu upabhavad ayamastit jetat astam samasmin apitat upamita kim Krishna vartmavam magno. He said, the two of you are mahita bhago, you're so fortunate. Kidyatamassamipam, don't cry, don't grieve. You should see satatam adivasantam, satatam. Krishna is residing here all times. Not only here, but he's everywhere. Just like fire is everywhere, Krishna is also everywhere. And he says there's a reason why Krishna is not allowing you to see his form here now. You should know that he's directly with you because he's God. He's all-pervading. But the reason why he's not doing that, he's not coming here and showing you right now, is because asarada vimohana pratanam. Because he has to fool the demons. And they're thinking that he's not here. Because if the demons think that Krishna's in Vrindavan, then they're going to march. Jarasandha is going to march with a great army on Vrindavan. So Krishna, he wants to fool them to think that he's not actually here. And Uddhava looks at Nanda and Yashoda when he speaks like this, and he sees, nope, it didn't work. Trying to tell Nanda and Yashoda that Krishna is all-pervading, that he's everywhere. It didn't work. So then Uddhava thought to himself, oh, now I have to speak to them in another kind of way. So he says, Nahyasya priyam apriyam cha. You should know no one is dear to Krishna. No one is Krishna's enemy. And Krishna doesn't see anything as his possession. He doesn't feel that he belongs to anyone. He says, Shamba naiva pitapi naiva kutapi sarveshi tu. No one, therefore, can be the father or mother of Krishna. But Krishna, yadyapi eva matapi bhakta janata premartata nutaye. Krishna, understanding us, he accepts the sentiments, the bhakti, from his devotees to mitigate the pain coming from their prema. So how can he give you up? Katamvam tadrisav ujato. How could he give you up when you're suffering like this? In the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, Shukadeva Goswami describes the words of Uddhava. Try to understand, Uddhava is saying this to Nanda and Yashoda. It's astonishing. He says, Yuvayo, Yuvayo means the two of you. Yuvayo eva naivayam, atmajo bhagavan hari sarvesham, atmajo hyatma, pita mata sa ishvara. He says, you should understand that Krishna, he's not your son. Naivayam atmajo, he's not actually your son, but rather Bhagavan Hari. He's Bhagavan. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's not your son, but Sarvesham Atmajo. He's the son of everyone. He's Atmapita Saishra. He's the father and mother of everyone. He's God. He's not just your son, Jiva says in his commentary in this verse, but he's everyone's son because he's the soul of all souls. He's not just a son, but he's a father and mother of everyone at the same time. So Uddhava is trying to pacify Nanda and Yashoda in this way by telling them that Krishna is not your son. A similar statement is made later on in the 10th canto, in the 85th chapter, which is what we'll be heading toward, which is the meeting in Kurukshetra. It's a statement which was made in Kurukshetra by Vasudeva to Krishna. When he saw Krishna again in Kurukshetra, Vasudeva told Krishna and Balaram, Yuvam nana suto sakshat pradana purusheshvaro. Actually, you're not our sons, but you're God. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Krishna appeared in his Vasudeva form, in the prison of Kamsa before Vasudeva and Devaki, he manifested a four-armed form. And at that time, Vasudeva and Devaki fell down on their hands and knees and they began to offer prayers to them. But as we've commented before, Nanda and Yashoda, they never offered obeisances to Krishna. So here Uddhava is trying to console them by speaking some philosophy. Don't cry. You should actually understand the nature of Krishna, that Krishna is Bhagavan, that Krishna is God, that he's all-pervading, and that really no one's actually his father or mother. Actually, he's the father and mother of everyone. You're not really his father and mother. Krishna is equal to everyone. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshastina priya yebajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. Krishna says, Samoham, I'm equal to everyone. Sarva bhuteshu name dveshu, I'm not envious of anyone. Stina priya, no one is dear to me. I don't get involved in this raga dvesh, this like and dislike. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says a similar thing, which we described previously. We posted recently on our Facebook page. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, he says that jadi hoy raga dvesh, jaha hoy avesh. If I accept this rag and dvesh, or this like and dislike, then I can't speak the simple truth. I can't write this thing. So Krishna says, I'm Bhagavan. I don't envy anyone. I'm not partial to anybody. I'm equal to everybody. And our acharyas explain this, that just in the same way that a big man, a rich man, has two sons, and one son becomes a drunkard and starts hanging out with prostitutes and robbing people and becomes a dacoit. But he has another son who's a very good son, who comes out to be a high court judge and is very humble and respectful to the father and follows all the different rules and regulations properly. Now the father loves both sons, but apparently it doesn't seem so when you look at his dealings, because with the son who becomes a judge, the father praises him. And with the son who became a dacoit, a gunda, a robber, the father chastises him. But our Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, says both are an equal manifestation of his love. He loves both sons. But one of them He sees that the proper way to love him is to chastise him. This is what's needed. And the other one, he praises him. But Krishna is actually samoham sarvabhuteshu. But this quality of being samoham sarvabhuteshu, this is a lesser quality. Na me dveshosti na priya, acharyas have described. This is Krishna's Narayan feature. And this is what Uddhava is trying to speak to Nanda and Yashoda. But the second line of the verse, our acharyas have described, this shows how Krishna is even greater than God. How he's greater than Lord Narayan. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mayiteshu chapyaham. That someone who's my devotee, that person, they're in me. Mayiteshu chapyam, I'm in them. I'm a friend of them. So this is Krishna's nature, again, just like the father who's equal to both sons. When he sees someone as a devotee, then Krishna behaves in this way. But even more so, Krishna says, I become bound up. I become bound up by the rope of love of such a devotee. So Jiva Goswami describes in Gopal Champu that Uddhava then goes on to speak to Nanda and Yashoda, Atta bhakta janat anyatra tu tasya tat tat kurvat kolpasya nalpako pyaveshas te janad anye chatatra sambrama eva iti vadan pervartan eva pushnan uvacha. He says that Krishna, he's not inclined to act in this way for anybody except for his devotees. And everybody else, kolpasya, kolpana means illusion. They're all just simply an illusion. And then saying this, Uddhava begins to expand on his previous words. And he tells Nanda and Yashoda that the Lord doesn't destroy the gunas, the ropes or the modes of nature that are binding up the jivas, although those gunas are close to him, because those jivas are opposed to him due to the influence of Maya. He's telling us to Nanda and Yashoda. And he says that because Krishna favors his devotees and not the demons, that's why he's become your son, because he's controlled by your love. In the absence of that ecstatic praying, people can't really be happy with ordinary love. And then Uddhava speaks a very wonderful verse. Ityudavasi brajaraja deyor muhu, ityudavasi brajaraja yor muhu, swaswanurupam vadator nishagata, buddhistu tasmin lago udavasyasa, brajesitu prema javena chikshipe. He says that as the conversation between Uddhava and Nanda Maharaj continued, then dawn appeared. But Uddhava still hadn't given up his intelligence because of the impetuous prema of Nanda Maharaj. So still, although the dawn is arising, and Jiva Goswami in this way is using an allegory that the dawn of this prema, now Uddhava is beginning to see the nature of the love of Nanda Maharaj. But still, Uddhava hasn't given up his buddhi. Buddhistu tasmin lagur uddhavasyasa, his great intelligence. He still hasn't done that. And so then Uddhava tells Nanda and Yashoda that don't worry, Krishna's going to return very, very soon to Vrindavan. Jiva Goswami comments that Nanda and Yashoda still weren't peaceful. Rather, when Uddhava began to speak about all the glories of Krishna, their hearts became filled with pain. And so then Uddhava started telling him, Don't worry, he's going to return. Krishna promises, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. He always reciprocates with his devotees. That's the nature of his love, so he's going to return. And Uddhava, in this way, he begins to praise Nanda and Yashoda that your love for Krishna is so intense, definitely he's going to return. And this is a fact. What Uddhava is telling Nanda and Yashoda, he's not just telling some story to try to pacify them, but he's speaking the truth. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarita Darshani comments that Nanda Maharaj at that time and Yashoda, they look at Uddhava and they shake their head and they say, Uddhava, you're just a child. My Guru Maharaj used to paraphrase this purport sometimes. You're just a child. We heard you're very intelligent, but now we see you're very foolish because you're praising us. How can you praise us? Who would let such a wonderful son who has so many good qualities leave his home and go somewhere else? Who is there in all the three worlds who's more unfortunate, more miserable, more degraded than us? We're to be condemned by everyone. So Uddhava, understanding that Nanda Maharaj was going to speak like this, he told him in the 34th verse in this 46th chapter, Agami Satya Adirgena, that don't worry. Agami Satya, he's going to return. Adirgena, it won't be very long. He's going to return very, very soon. And Krishna never breaks his promise. He's going to come here. He's going to stay here. He'll fulfill all of your desires. As soon as Krishna, now that he's killed Kamsa, and as soon as he satisfies the Yadus, then he's going to maintain his promise, and he's going to come back to see you. Krishna's promised this. He said, Ayasya, that I'm going to return. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that when Sukadeva Goswami, he says, Krishna satyam karoti tat, that Krishna truthfully satyam, he uses the word karoti. Karoti is used, it's present tense, to mean that Krishna is going to return very, very quickly. And actually that he's fulfilling his promise just right now. That Krishna's right here with you. Krishna's everywhere. Krishna's all pervading. But it doesn't satisfy Nanda and Yashoda. And seeing that, then Uddhava again begins to speak some gyan to Nanda and Yashoda. And we'll take this up again in the 36th verse of this 46th chapter. At this point now, I'd like to go to see the devotees here if there's any comments from everybody. And I want to thank everybody very much for taking part in this. We're not a speaker or anything in the Bhagavatam. We're just trying to do service for our Guru Maharaj and service for Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnavas and share a little something. So our happiness is to be able to associate with the devotees. And Brinda Sundari in Denver, thank you very much. And Sanjay Prabhu. Anarpita Karuna, Mataji is there. Hare Krishna. Aditi, Hare Krishna. It's so nice to see you. It was nice to get your association in Mayapur. I'm sorry we didn't get more. And Sanjay Prabhu says, thank you for expressing the humble mood of Haridas Das Babaji. We're very happy to see you, very jubilant being at your home in Puri Dham. Well, thank you, Prabhuji. Meditating on Haridas Das Babaji is a very, very sober thing. We have our preaching mission in this movement, but sometimes we equate that preaching to mean to advertise our bhajan everywhere. But we should meditate also on the mood of devotees like Kurukshetra Das Babaji, like Haridas Das Babaji and others who didn't want to have any position. Nitai Kumar Roy is there. Jai Gaurachan Prabhu. Hare Krishna says, it makes me happy to see you at home. We want what's in your heart. Well, if anybody sees behind me this very nice shelf, or there's a little bit of a picture you can see behind me. Let's see if I can. You see Balaram there? This is a beautiful painting done by Jai Gaur, by Bana Biharani. And the shelf is made by Jai Gaur. We're remembering you, Prabhuji, today. Naveen Prabhu is saying, thank you very much for resuming wonderful kathas. Bindasundari's commented, I don't know how this pastime goes, but I have a feeling that no matter what Uddhava says, Krishna's parents will not be pacified. Yes, you're correct. It's not going to work. And we'll be turning to a book that we had the good fortune of compiling a few years ago. This is Mathura Meets Vrindavan. And this is a collection of lectures from our Guru Maharaj about this conversation between Uddhava and Nanda and Yashoda. Sanjay Prabhu is saying that is the Haridas Das Babaji you mentioned, is he the same as the Haridas Sain who is at Dandabanga? No, that's another personality. Haridas Das Babaji passed away long before Haridas Sain Das Babaji. It's another different personality. Haridas Das Babaji was famous at the Haribol Kutir in Navadvip, whereas Haridas Sain Maharaj was living in Orissa. Okay, if anybody else has any other reflections or comments they'd like to share, you can go ahead and post that. Okay. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop. Krishna Kun, you're sitting here today. Do you have any thoughts you want to share? Anything?
I was struck by one specific point about Parama Prema, how Uddhava uses that phrase because he hasn't met the gopis yet. So for him, this is Parama Prema. He's never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
But it's by association that one absorbs anything from someone's heart.
It's not just philosophy. Uddhava, this is the problem. Uddhava knows so much philosophy. I mean, he's got a Bhakti Shastri degree. He passed at the head of his class. But Uddhava has only got Gyan. He hasn't actually come in touch with the devotee. And so it's not enough just to read the books. But we have to come in contact with the devotee who's living the books. So that's a very important point. And because Uddhava has only come in touch with Nanda and Yashoda now, he says, my God, these are the greatest devotees in the whole world. But he hasn't yet met the gopis. And we'll read something more about that. So Sanjay Prabhu is asking me for a copy of that article. I'll send that to you. If anybody else wants that, you can send me a private message on Facebook and we'll go ahead and send you that thing. So thank you very much. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to be back online again, what day we're going to be doing it, but we'll definitely want to have at least one class every week and continue this topic, maybe even have 2 a week. I'll make some announcement on Facebook and other places. So thank you all very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai, Gopremanandi Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpadarubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva Cha Patitanam